Hello and welcome to Talking Good Games. Just finished West Ham United 4, Huddersfield Town 3. But it wasn't, well, it was a little bit exciting. Depends which fan you are. And it wasn't as plain sailing as we all expected. Let's go through the highlights very quickly. Tom, 7 minutes, West Ham had their first chance. Antonio hit the bar, and then we made it 1-0. Mark Noble from the penalty spot, a slightly different penalty to last time, just puts it down the middle. Stonewall pen. Were you happy with what you're seeing at this point, or was there a few warning signs?
I don't know, really. It was a cagey affair. I expected Huddersfield to come at us in the first sort of 15 to 20 minutes. So, I mean, I wasn't entirely disappointed. I just thought as soon as we went 1-0 up, I thought that was it. We can not shot, but it was a question of how many goals are we going to score today? Because I just did not expect, especially going 1-0 down, Huddersfield not been scoring goals at all this season, that they were going to come into the game in the slightest. But how wrong I was.
That's exactly the mentality West Ham United had as well, and that was the problem. Charlie, 2 minutes later, it was 1-1. Bakuna, Huddersfield Town went 595 minutes without an away goal, and then it was 1-1 Huddersfield.
Yeah, with what can only be described as possibly the worst defending from a corner you would have seen for the next, 3 minutes until they did it consistently for the rest of the game. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's genuinely ridiculous that we have so many people that tall who are actually good defenders standing and watching Huddersfield players who aren't very tall run about in the area like they're Lionel Messi, but somehow in the air. And it was disgustingly easy. Disgustingly easy. From that point, I thought, okay, we're 1-0 up. They're going to have to come at us, and this is when we look our best. And then we gifted them a goal. And let's not get this wrong. It was a fine header and everything else, but we genuinely gifted it to them.
It's been over a year, 13 months since Huddersfield Town last had a league game where there are two different goal scorers. Welcome to the London Stadium, Huddersfield Town. Tom, 29 minutes, Grant. Charlie said he couldn't believe defending for the first one. Well, somehow I think we managed to make the defending even worse for this one. A free kick from Huddersfield in the middle of the pitch, goes out to the left, goes through the middle of our box. Everyone stands still except Grant, who all he really does is swing a leg. And it's 2-1 Huddersfield, Tom.
Yeah, it was... what can I say? Just woeful defending yet again. I can't wait for Balbuena to be back in this side, because I just do not trust Diop and Ogbonna together sometimes. What can you say? The man, Grant wasn't picked up in the middle. It was another lack of judgment error from two centre-halves that had been poor in the last couple of games. And, our backs were truly against the wall at that point.
What did you make of the first half? Went in 2-1 at half-time. Tom, what was your thoughts at half-time?
Disgusted, really, because I know we won, so it's kind of a positive in the end. But it's this constant, smaller teams that we play. The mentality that we go in with is just shocking. We almost expect to go in and beat these teams, and actually these teams turn up and either put in a good performance, or show us up. And it's not just happened once or twice this season. It happened last week at Cardiff. It's happened against Wimbledon. It's happened against numerous teams. Bournemouth at home at the start, maybe Wolves at the start of the season. And I know that we have come back and won the game, but something has got to change in these guys' mentality in the dressing room, and what we would perceive to be smaller clubs. And I know Pellegrini was talking this week in the press about having a big club mentality, but whatever he's saying there, you don't see that performance really when it's putting in the pitch, especially games like this. The only times I've seen that is actually when we're going up against the top sides and we look like we've put a shift in, but we're so complacent against teams that we should be expecting to be beaten. And although we got there in the end today, it was absolutely atrocious first half of football.
At half-time, Pellegrini made one sub as Javier Hernandez came on to replace Michail Antonio. Antonio, however, was busy for the second 45 minutes of the game as he had to go collect all the balls he booted over the bar for the first 45 minutes. Charlie, 20 minutes into the second half, it was 3-1. We all expected a different West Ham, but we got the same one, and we got the same Huddersfield. Then Grant again getting his second goal. Diop goes flying in, misses the ball, and then Ogbonna decides to show the striker onto his stronger foot. But what a finish!
Yeah, before I say anything, let's give him credit for the control after. I mean, Diop completely missed the ball, but the control to get it past was really, really nice. And then even though Ogbonna did show him onto his stronger foot, to put it, Fabianski gets a hand to it, but it's still right up in the corner. A really great finish, a really strong finish, and one that we would die for any of our strikers to be able to pull off with any sort of consistency. However, Jesus Christ, what the hell are defenders doing? Diop comes flying in like I don't even know. Do you remember that GIF, the one of Sol Campbell sliding across, which just disappears out of frame? It felt like that. He was nowhere to be seen. Ogbonna just sort of walked towards him, and like you say, he showed him onto his stronger foot. Why? What the hell are you doing? And even if it's not strong, just put a foot. What are you doing? I've said it before, and I've said it since the beginning of the season. The high line we play is suicidal. It really genuinely is. I understand why we do it. I understand the tactical idea of pushing it forward to try and maintain possession and to try and play them offside. But the fact of the matter is the ball comes into those spaces and our defenders have to turn and run backwards. They are constantly running backwards. And you have a player like Grant, who, I'll be honest, haven't heard of before this season, even before today that much. And he makes both of our centre-backs look like complete and utter mugs. And it's ridiculous. The high line we play is suicidal. And I understand why we're sticking with it. But Jesus Christ, today, like it has done since the beginning of the season, has shown why we shouldn't be playing it.
We'll discuss the overall performance on the first 75 minutes performance in a minute. We'll go on to the next 3 goals. Luckily, they all came for West Ham United. Charlie, Ogbonna's always looked a little bit dangerous in the box from set pieces. Well, he finally got on the end of one today and put it away. Caswell corner, Ogbonna header. You then felt 15 minutes to go, we're on a goal down. If there's any team in the league going to crumble, it's Huddersfield.
Yeah, and you can criticise Ogbonna to the cows come home for a lot of things, but the one thing he is good at is in the air for corners for us. Maybe not against us, but for us, he is always consistently a threat, and he did do well. And you're right, at that point, it felt they had been sitting very deep for the entire second half anyway. They had clearly been like, right, we're going to try and see this out, and especially once it got to 3-1, there was literally about as little attacking intent as you can get from them. Not that it had been much before that, but that's the way they were playing, and so it felt like if we could consistently get in and around that area and not have the breaks against us so effective, if not have them break against us so effectively that they could crumble, and that did come to pass.
Tom, Anderson had a pretty quiet game. Then he decided that he would do one moment of decent football, if you like, lovely crossing. Javier Hernandez doing what he's always done. A little glimpse, a little touch, but it's enough to make it 3-3. We've seen 2 different strikers out there. We'll talk about the other one in a minute. But Hernandez, that's what he's known for, and that's the type of service he gets. He scores.
Yeah, I mean, he is a fox in the box. Obviously, that is his tagline. And you know, once again, he's deadly from a few yards out. And I think Anderson has been shocking since the turn of January. He's just gone missing. Not the same player at the start of the season. Obviously, we know he played a lot of games, but I'm glad to see that he did put a shift in the last 20 minutes, and you could see, especially with the ball that he put in, his work rate in the last 20 minutes. But no, as for Hernandez, it's to finish his goal, does what he's born to do, get him in the box, get him a chance, just a slimmer of a chance. It could be the little slightest of touch, like it was in both goals he scored today. But he will always score those. It's a striker's finish, and I wouldn't say deserved, but yeah, back in the game at 3-3.
Then it should have been 4-3 Huddersfield in the 90th minute. Someone, I'm not sure who got played in, but Fabianski made a good save. Then Billing somehow missed from about 8 yards out. A minute later, though, Charlie, it was celebrations all around. Nasri with a lovely cross into the back post. And Hernandez, unmarked, about 5 yards of space on his own at the back post. Lovely dive. He dived last week against Cardiff, but this time he did it with a purpose. 4-3 West Ham.
He did it with a purpose last week as well. It just made him look like a dickhead. Yeah, the thing is, Nasri deserves credit as well for the tackle. He fought hard for it and then looked up and saw the space. But the thing is, you put enough attacking players on the pitch, eventually a cross might actually land to one of them. And Hernandez does well and deserves credit for what is ultimately quite a smart finish to put it back across the goal, to wrong foot the goalkeeper like that. And if I'm honest, it almost made me angrier that we weren't able to do that for the rest of the game.
And Charlie, what did you make of the first 75 minutes of today's game? At this point, before we scored our second, 3-1 down, what did you make of that first 75?
It made me... I'm not calling for Pellegrini's head at all, but it made me wonder what the hell is going on in there, because it was one of the worst performances I've seen in a while. We were completely going forward. We were lackadaisical, slow, lethargic, and there was no movement. It wasn't even like we were keeping possession because our movement and our passing was so good. We were keeping possession because Huddersfield just stood there and watched us walk about the pitch. There was no real intent. There was no real triangles happening. Those the best games, like for example the Arsenal game when we beat them, we had these nice, neat, convincing passing triangles. Everything was working. We were just passing left to right with no real intent and no real pace, and Huddersfield just stood there and watched it. And then defensively, we were about as bad as it's humanly possible to be. How you can have so many decent enough defenders in a row and yet be so utterly woeful at it, I genuinely do not understand.
Tom, first 75.
First 75 minutes.
Yeah, what's your thoughts on the first 75 minutes today?
Much as what I've said before, it's there's that attitude is woeful at times. If only we could sort of, and I'm not expecting for 38 games a season that we have the exact same mentality week in, week out. But if you're going to come out and speak about it in your press conference and in the press this week and say that you want these big club mentality, this big club mentality in games against lower opposition, then you need to follow through with it. You've clearly worked on it on the training ground of how you're going to attempt to dominate possession. You create your chances, try and wear Huddersfield down. But we haven't seen that today, and I thought that it was the worst game for a lot of players today. I thought Zabaleta last few games he's not looked great. Diop's worst game for West Ham, I think, so far. Ogbonna, fair enough, he scored the goal, but again, very, very, very just Ogbonna-like performance, you could say. I thought Cresswell played really well. I thought Rice was average. Anderson went missing. Thankfully, those players that came off the bench made an impact. And a special shout, I think, for Nasri today, because I thought, he's not had a lot of game time since he's come here, but he's picked up the slack straight away. And when he's been needed, he's actually played really well. I know he's only played a couple of games, but no, those first 75 minutes were. Each week I think to myself, oh, this is the worst West Ham performance I've seen this season. Oh, Cardiff last week was the worst, but it just seems to get worse week in, week out. But thankfully we had the nous to come back into the game and actually win it. But yeah, shocking first 75.
I thought we were awful for that 75 minutes today. They were playing like strangers again. It's not the first time I said it. It was almost like a third half to the Cardiff game last week. It was almost like we just continued the manner we were playing against Cardiff. There was no responsibility out in the pitch. There was no player until substitutions were made. There was no player that said, right, give me the ball and let's make things happen here. It was almost like we were scared of Huddersfield, and I don't know why, because with respect to them, they haven't scored an away goal in the league in 2019 until today. They're bottom of the league. Even if they win all their games between now and the end of the season, I still think they'll get relegated. They're practically down. They're just waiting to be put out of their misery a little bit. Does that make them sort of fearless? Does that take the pressure off them and allow them to go out and play that football? Perhaps. I mean, the Grant has scored a wonderful goal today, but their first two goals you can easily put down to bad defending just as much as you can put down to sort of good offensive play from Huddersfield. We were awful out there. There's hardly any players today that come out with pass marks for West Ham United, despite the fact that we won. It's a mixed feeling because I'm sort of half angry, half disappointed, but at the same time we won. In the last 15 minutes, we played well, and did we deserve the win? I'm not sure we did. I feel sorry for Huddersfield fans. They must be wondering how they've come out of that with no points, etc. Charlie, does the team deserve credit for the last 15 minutes, or is it a case of Huddersfield were that bad, or etc. etc.?
They don't deserve credit. If anything, they deserve more of a bollocking, because where the hell was it for the other 75? Like, we turned up. You can't stress it enough. We turned up for only 15 minutes today and scored 3 goals. 3. That's 1 every 5 minutes. And for the other 75, we looked about as bad as it was possible to be. I feel, you said it just a second ago, I feel so sorry for Huddersfield fans, because they've probably travelled a hell of a long way. They've put a lot of hours in and thought, we've got this here, we've actually done it. And to the credit, their team really worked hard. They really, really did. I think some of the way they went down was a bit iffy, and I think some of the fouls they were doing were really iffy, but they worked their hardest, and we did not. We really did not, and we did not deserve a single thing from that game. So I'm not willing really to give the players any sort of praise for the last 15 minutes, because it should have been there for the rest of the game. Tom keeps mentioning this like big club mentality thing, which I think is a great point. I don't really give a shit about having a big club mentality. All I want is a professional mentality. I want them to go out there and there is no easy game in the Premier League, right? Huddersfield is about as easy as it's going to get this year, but it is not an easy game by any stretch of imagination. And yet we rolled up looking about as unprofessional as possible. And that is something that I can't really forgive, despite the fact we've somehow managed to come out of this with 3 points.
I normally ask you to talk about individual players, which I will in a second, but there's one player in particular I want to talk about before I throw that out. Tom, Marko Anajovic got brought back in today. What did you make of his performance?
Not great. Just very lackluster. I wouldn't want to say he's disinterested, but I don't think he had the service that he was accustomed to at the start of the season. Obviously, he's not exactly been in and around the squad the last few. Well, he's been around the squad, but he's not been playing. It was very stop-start. Obviously, he got his injury when he came back after the whole China thing. So, admittedly, yes, like if he had the service today, do I think he would have potentially scored and looked a bit more lively? Yeah, I do. It'd be interesting to see, obviously, the difference between if Hernandez had started and then Arnautovic had come on for those final 25, what kind of an impact that he had. But obviously you can only go off for face value for what we saw for the first 50, 60 minutes. And yeah, not great. He says he wants to be here. He says he wants to stay at the club. He signed a new contract. He wants to prove to the fans. But no, he's just not doing it at the minute for me. And I'm sure, for most West Ham fans as well, it is a shame to see it, obviously, whatever's gone on his head and has turned him like that. But unfortunately, he's just not doing it on the pitch right now. And obviously, I think going into next week, Hernandez probably, or after the international break, that Hernandez gets the start for me.
Charlie, Arnautovic got his start. It was in the papers last week. He was getting a bit frustrated about his lack of game time. Got a start today against the worst team in the league, statistically. He didn't really take it.
Oh, it did him sad he's not playing. I think the thing is he didn't show that he wanted to be on the pitch today. He walked about, didn't really do much. There were times where I remember once Declan Rice had the ball, he came darting towards him, screaming for it. Declan played the ball to him, and then he passed it straight back to Declan and walked off. All right, cool, calm. Thanks for that. That was real useful. The problem in that first half was even when we did create the very little things we did, and there were very, very few, it ends at his feet because he was the one up front. And he did have one or two chances where he should have put it away. He should have, or at least done better to test the goalkeeper, and he didn't. He completely and utterly fluffed his lines. So despite the fact I actually didn't want to see Antonio, strangely for me, I didn't want to see Antonio come off at halftime because I thought he will at least beat his man with consistency. Don't know how he does it, but he does it. So I didn't want to see him come off. But once Hernandez came on and Arnautovic was no longer the sole focal point, we actually managed to start to create one or two more things. I'm not going to say he deserved to get booed, but Jesus Christ, did he have a very bad game? And I wouldn't be depressed to not see him play for us for a little while.
When he got subbed off, that's the quickest he moved all afternoon, running down the tunnel, running off the pitch, it's the fastest he moved. And there was one point in the first half, I think it was Creswell, bombing down the left, acres of space, and Anajovic overhit it so badly. It was almost like he'd done it on purpose. It was such an awful pass. Now, I'm not saying he did do it on purpose. That's how bad he was. And I know we can say he didn't get the service, etc. But sometimes a striker has to take a bit of blame for his movement or not being in the right position, etc. I mean, Hernandez comes on the pitch. He's on the pitch for 15, 20 minutes, gets 2 goals. Why? Because he's in the right place. He's standing where he should be. And when a midfielder gets the ball, they look to a certain area. They don't look up at the other side of the pitch, see where they are. They look at the middle of the box and say, is the striker in there? Hernandez was both times, bang, and it goes towards him, and he puts it away. And his body language was awful today. There was a couple of times he got a half a tackle on him or something. He's rolling his arms around as he does. Now, I know we put up with this when he's sort of in and out of form and before all this, but since this has happened, our attitude towards him changes, and rightly so, because he wanted to be here. When it wasn't going great for him, you could excuse him a little bit. You could say, oh, he's a bit like that. He's temperamental. But now it's completely changed. Since you've sort of shit on the club a little bit and the fan base, well, you have to wait for your chance. He got his chance today. He didn't take it whatsoever. Hernandez come on the park, took his chance twice. He got 2 chances today, Hernandez, took them both. So I'm with Tom. He starts next week for me. Charlie, any other individual performers you wish to praise or criticise? Take your pick.
I could spend all day criticising all of them, if I'm honest. Even Fabianski, I don't think he played particularly well. I think he made the amount of unforced errors we made today was absurd, especially in the opening 75 minutes, as you said. It was actually mad. Ball comes over the top. Fabianski just completely misses a header, completely with no pressure. Diop did the same, or Bonner did the same. There were so many terrible, terrible performances in there that I almost don't want to waste my time talking about, because there was just an absurd amount. I think it was very easy for Nasri once he came on. Because they were sitting so deep, and he came on as a centre mid and just sort of was given the ball and free rein to do stuff. But to be fair to him, he did stuff with it. And again, that goal he deserves credit for. He was the one who put the work in and put in a great ball for Hernandez to finish. So I think he deserves some credit. Again, I don't think Antonio had a good game, and Jesus Christ, do I wish he would aim a little bit lower. But he at least was beating his man with some form of consistency, which is what he does. But that's just Antonio. So at least he did that. Apart from that, though, I think the rest of them, to be honest with you, can get to some words I shouldn't say on a YouTube video.
Tom, you touched on it earlier, but any other performance you'd like to go into a little bit more detail on?
Yeah, no, I'm just laughing at Charlie there about Antonio. He's it was fun. No, I'm only laughing because I was listening to Charlie Nicholas before on Gillette Soccer Saturday before the game started, and he said that Antonio was a good, strong player, and he was good on the ball. And then first half, and he ran inside and he had a shot, and it ended up in row Z or whatever. It's just typical Antonio. No, I think out of the starting 11, I think Lanzini, obviously we've got to give him credit because he's come back off of a long injury, and he hasn't. I'm not saying he's back at his best, but he still looks sharp, which is the main thing for somebody who's had an ACL injury. Don't know how they're going to be if they lost pace or turning or cutting inside or skills or stuff like that. But he still looks the same player. So hopefully, in the next or back end of this season, next couple of weeks, maybe he can get a goal or an assist or something. But signs look good for next season. I thought Cresswell looked more like himself. He does more and more each week. It's sort of bit of a massive change around for him from what it's been in the last sort of year or so. Every time I look at him, I see him sort of becoming the Cresswell of old again. But the rest of the starting 11 for me were woeful. And obviously Hernandez and I think Nasri were the two standout performers off the bench. I think Nasri's obviously probably not ready to go for a full 90 minutes, but I'd be interested to see what he can do when you give him more time, because he does offer that calming presence going forward sometimes, and maybe a bit more, even though he's slower, a bit more of a an adept skill than say somebody that Antonio has. His delivery in the final third is brilliant. But yeah, it was good to come back into it today, but some questionable performances all round.
Well, you two mentioned the centre backs. Not going to mention them. I thought, apart from the fact that I thought it felt they kept putting Fabianski under some strange pressure by kicking it to his left foot all the time. For some strange reason, every back pass is going to Fabianski's left foot, which I found a bit weird and unnecessary. I'll tell you what, I thought Declan Rice had possibly his worst game in a West Ham shirt today. I'm not seeing him get beaten so often. I had a quick look up about 15 minutes ago. He'd been skinned essentially 4 times in the game, and over the season it works out about 9% of the times he's been skinned this season. It's been against Huddersfield tonight. He was awful. Pritchard was all over him. Grant was dropping deep into where Declan Rice usually dominates that area of the pitch. That's where Huddersfield were getting their joy. They weren't getting the joy down the wings like that. They were getting it where Declan Rice operates, which is concerning. But, he's had a fantastic season. You can excuse him one bad game, but we're talking about 90 minutes only. And I thought for tonight's 90 minutes, I thought Declan Rice was really, really bad tonight. I'm
praying that England stuff doesn't go to his head. I really am.
Well, we'll wait and see. I'm not going to criticise Antonio too much, because I thought he was the only player in the first half that actually looked capable of hurting Huddersfield in some sort of way. And like Charlie, when he came off at half-time, I thought, I know we have to get the extra striker on. It just feels like the easy sub to me. Why is Anderson so protected? Now, I'm aware he set up the goal for the equaliser and stuff, but apart from that, he didn't do anything, Anderson. I don't know why he's sort of given this free pass week in, week out when he has a poor performance. Everyone just sort of ignores it and thinks, oh, well, he'll turn up eventually. But the thing is, we've been saying this since February, since January. We've been sitting waiting, going, yeah, but Anderson, he's got it in his locker. But the thing is, so does Antonio. We've all seen Antonio playing well recently. And I just felt a bit sorry for him, actually, because, yes, his shooting's not great, but at least he's shooting. And no one else is shooting. And to be fair, his shot with his left foot was one of the best efforts he's had this season. It wasn't that far over. It's just it's just weak bloody foot. It was a bit strange, but there's just the worst thing is tonight for me is there's more questions than answers, and that's the bad thing. When you win a game, that old myth in football, never change your winning side, well, that's definitely not going to apply to tonight's team, because nobody's going to want to see the team that started tonight start again against Everton in a couple of weeks' time. But Charlie, can I get your final words on tonight's performance and I think Nasri's going to win it, or Hernandez, but your hammer of the match. Let's inject some positivity. We've won.
Oh, if you want positivity, you might have to go to someone else. Okay, let's find some positives.
I don't know why you're looking at me for it.
Yeah, I know, right? Let's find some positives. We managed to score 4 goals. It might be against one of the worst teams in the league, but we managed to actually do it. What a time to be alive that was. Hernandez looked like he was at least trying to make up for looking like a complete mug last time. Even like you saw him when he was running in towards Lossell, and Lossell would get the ball, he'd stop and like pat Lossell and be like, "Good work, you did all right." Like he looked like he's at least. It looks like Pellegrini has maybe shouted at him and gone, "Don't do that again because you made everyone look like complete bricks," which is good. Yeah, Antonio continues to at least have some semblance of form. Give him credit for the way he does pass his man consistently, and given how bad the rest of them were doing, I think that deserves credit. And yeah, Nasri, despite not having very long on the pitch, and despite I think it being an incredibly easy situation for him to do, I think deserves credit for his performance. And as Tom said, I think actually Cresswell going forward was very good. I think at the back he was iffy, if I'm honest. I think Zabaleta was good going forward, but again at the back was iffy. They're the positives. If you want some positives, they're the positives. I have a lot more to say, but nothing else with any sort of semblance of happiness to it. So yeah.
Tom?
My positives. Vamos Chicharito. We'll go with that. We'll go with one of that. No, I think, yeah, what can you say? It was just one of those games today. I think, it's another team of Everton who have been struggling of late, so we need to not be as complacent, next time after the international break. But I think that with the players that did come on and did impact the game in that second half, I think those guys have to come in and start next week. I thought Chicharito, whenever he gets the opportunity, we saw it last season when he was in and out of the starting lineup under Moyes. He came back and he scored a massive goal when we were away at Chelsea for the 1-1 draw. We come here today, he scores big goals. He does score big goals in big games. And to be honest with you, I know he's not been everybody's cup of tea since he's been here, but he has been a clinical finisher when we've sometimes needed it most. And I thought he was different class when he came on today. So, yeah, vamos Chicharito.
I completely agree with you two there. Nasri, I've been sceptical about Nasri. People have said give him a new deal. I've always said, well, why? He's been injured half the time he's been here. Today, we've got a glimpse of that. But I think Charlie's bang on there and saying it's an easy game for Nasri to come on, because when he came on, I think it was Tony Gill was saying, "Well, hang on, Rice is in the middle here himself now. No one's going to get back." But the thing is, we could do that. It was against Huddersfield, against maybe 10 of the Premier League teams. They'd all lick their lips and go, "Hang on, they've only got Rice in centre midfield here. Let's get at them and stuff." So it was an easy game for Nasri. But the thing is, he did what Lanzini didn't do for the whole game. He did what Noble didn't do, and that was he put in a cross that could change the game, that won the game for us, etc. He got the foot on the ball and said, "Well, let's start controlling the tempo, etc." Hernandez, you can only praise Hernandez for today. He comes on and gets his 2 goals. He's a player. This is why I can sort of give him time a little bit, because Anavic and Hernandez wanted out in January. One of them still turned up at Wimbledon away. One of them still turned up at Bournemouth away. He maybe didn't play very well, but he was still there. He was still giving his time to the team, etc. While the other one said, "Oh, my head's not right, blah, 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 blah." Now, that's why I have very little patience for the Austrian. And I actually want to see Hernandez do well. He's got his goals today. He starts next week. It's as simple as that. And the only other positive is, it's a strange one, is we've got a quick fix for the centre-back problem. We've got Balbuena sitting on the bench now. And when a lot of West Ham fans before the game, about 80%, I would say, when I've seen everybody's team they'd like to see, when 80% of people want to see a certain player in the starting 11, usually they're not all wrong, okay? There's usually a reason for it, because we're watching every single West Ham game, and 80% of people said, "I'd like to see Balbuena back in today." Now, fair play to Pellegrini, I completely understand why he's stuck with Diop and Ogbonna, etc. But the quick fix is get Balbuena back in there against Everton, and I'd be very surprised if he wasn't. So that's the fix there. But we've still got a problem at right back. I don't think Zabaleta was great today. Fredericks was awful against Cardiff, so we've got an issue there. But 3 points for West Ham. Fantastic game for the neutral, but the only problem is we're not neutrals, and not many neutrals want to watch West Ham United against Huddersfield Town. But it does mean we won't be last on match of the day. But the only problem with that is there's only 3 Premier League games today as well. But anyway, let us know what you thought of the game. Leave your comments below. While West Ham won is very much a mixed emotion kind of game. Disappointed by the performance in the first 5 minutes, but a fantastic 15 minutes and a big 3 points on the board that put a little bit of pressure on Watford and Wolves. We're both on FA Cup duty this weekend in our battle to finish 7, if we can maybe scrape there. Drop a like on the video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you're new to the channel, and we'll be back very soon. Despite International Week, we've got a couple of videos coming your way in the next fortnight. See you soon.